Student training. Basically, as a teacher, it is our responsibility to ensure that our students get really good jobs. And the focus of today's session, today's afternoon session, will be on this particular topic, like how to ensure good jobs for our students, like how to prepare them for really good career opportunities that are waiting for them out there. So what are the takeaways of this webinar? Basically, I'll tell you how we should, prepare students for the job market, how to help them with their drafting work, how should students draft their resumes and CVs, what's the difference between the two, what is a resume and what is a CV, and basically what is the importance of cover letters, because many times what happens is people don't realize the importance of a good cover letter. A nicely drafted cover letter can make or break your chances, of getting the job interview. So see, the basic job of CVs and resumes and cover letters is to get you the job interview. Then whatever you do in the job interview is a completely different thing. But if students are not even able to go to that stage, then we must at least ensure that they could do to that stage. So that is part one. And part two is we should also help them ace the interview, not just clear the interview. They have to literally ace the interview, and the people who interview your students should be thrilled, and they should come back to your institute saying that the students that we hired from your institute are so good that every year we are going to come back to your institute. How can you do that? Basically, you can do this by organizing similar workshops and training sessions and talking to the placement cell, and make sure and by making sure your students have the right skills, not just hard skills but also soft skills, about which I already talked in my previous webinar. Now we'll also discuss something about resources and how students should start preparing for their job interviews. Then what is networking? Everybody hears this all the time, network, network, network. But what I tell people is, don't just learn network blindly. The networking should be meaningful. Otherwise, I've seen so many people with lots of connections, but hardly any connection is of any use. So we don't want that kind of fake networking where you have like 500 followers on LinkedIn, but not one of them is actually doing anything. So not that kind of a networking. Networking should be always meaningful. It should add some value. And then of course I'll keep you engaged by sharing some funny things, some funny mistakes that I came across, and some other things that will just to keep everybody awake, because I know it's afternoon time and it's the last day of the session. So I need to do a good job at keeping everybody including myself awake. And all right, so let's look at the background. So what's the problem today is, employers these days, of course, they still need hard skills. They still need people who are specialized in a particular area or a group of areas, but they also want students who have honed certain soft skills. And this is where the gap is. That's the gap. And many finishing schools are currently thriving because they have been able to successfully identify this gap, and in exchange for some fees, they are actually training students, and they are trying to impart some soft skills training to students. Some people prefer to refer to them as professional skills instead of soft skills, whatever is the terminology you use or prefer to use. Basically the idea is simple: students should be made familiar with these things at an early stage, much before their actual interview, so that their odds of cracking the interview increase significantly. Now, because of the pandemic, students are also finding it difficult to get new jobs. It's not that easy as it used to be before. So as university administrators and instructors and academicians, it is our prime duty to ensure that our students journey, the job hunting journey or the job hunting process is simplified for them. We need to facilitate this entire process by offering an end-to-end solution to our students. So with that in mind, I am delivering today's webinar. I'll navigate you through the entire process. And the reason why I'm doing this with you is you may not be a student actually. You could be a professor or an administrator or a university academician. But the reason why I'm conducting this workshop is to help your students. And because if I tell it to one instructor or one academician, the odds of the academician telling it to 100 others increases significantly. So with that in mind, I just thought of sharing a few thoughts with you. All right, so let's move on to the next point. How should students make their application package look really irresistible and unique? So this is the thing, whenever we see job applications, it's always the usual scenario, like out of 100, barely 20 actually qualify, and out of those 20 only 5 have done a good job. Out of those 5 only 3 are really okay, and out of those 3 1 is really good. So look at the odds, 1%. So generally, a few days ago I posted an advertisement myself. I got 327 applications. Out of those applications, so far I have shortlisted only like 4 or 5, and I ended up selecting only one. So look at the odds, it's less than 1%. So 1 out of 327, just calculate the odds. So these days what's happening is a lot of people are fiercely competing for the same advertised position. So unless and until your application package stands out, your, as in not your, because most of you already have jobs, I'm talking about your students, and if some students are registered, then it's yours. So either yours or your students application package needs to be so strong and so unique that your odds should increase significantly as soon as a recruiter or hiring manager comes across your application package. And by application package, I don't mean just your CV or resume. It's the entire thing. Right from day one, the time you submit your cover letter and CV and resume, to the time when you actually do the interview. So whatever happens between those 2 days, the interview day and the day on which you submitted your resume, CV, cover letter. So whatever happens in between those 2 days, we are going to cover today. And so let's get started. All right. So now, once again, I already mentioned this and I delivered an entire webinar on soft skills. So I'm not going to say the same things again, but I quickly need to mention a few things because not all people who are attending today might have attended my previous webinar. They can always go and check on YouTube, but it is still my duty to at least make a passing mention about soft skills. So let me quickly present the list to you. Soft skills. Now, what do your students need to be good at? First of all, they need to be very effective communicators. Now, let me share one industry secret with you. A lot of things that happen in the corporate world are based on effective communication. And that is also true in the academic world and, government, any other place. How does it work? So let's say you are a professor. You still need to write grants. So you need to be good in written communication. You still need to present at conferences. So you have to be good in oral communication. You still have to cope with colleagues who are trying to play politics, colleagues who are trying to do all kinds of crazy things. I'm not saying that it happens at your institute. I'm saying that this is a general observation. So what I'm trying to say here is you have to, everybody, including myself, we all need to own some of these specialized soft skills or professional skills in order to navigate through these difficult to navigate waters. Sometimes things can get tricky, and that's when your communication skills can come to your immediate rescue. So all of us need to be very effective in communication. Nowadays we cannot even make an excuse. Like someone can always say that I studied in a non-English medium school, so I'm not good in English. That's not an excuse at all, because even forget about today. Even like several years ago, almost a decade ago, when Coursera and Udemy and things like YouTube were not there, many of my friends who were from villages, they never studied in an English medium school. So just like I did my PhD from the US, they also did their PhD from abroad, and today they speak English really well. So we don't really have any excuse. Anybody who, see, if you can be a good scientist, you can be a good engineer, you can be a good professional, a good manager. Learning a language and getting skilled in sentence delivery is not a challenge at all. It's so easy these days. There are so many resources. So all of us have to take a lot of effort or some effort depending on where we stand, and we have to ensure that we become very good communicators. A person who communicates well can do anything. I mean, I'm not saying anything. What I'm trying to say is the person who communicates well, who is also good at certain things, can do well. That's what I'm saying. Mere communication does not help, because there are lots of people who can speak really well but who have no idea about the subject expertise. There are plenty of people in Bollywood and Hollywood. They speak well, they act well, but they don't know anything about the subject, right? So that's what I'm saying. You should be good in your subject, plus you should always also be able to communicate your thoughts effectively to your target audience. It could be some people attending a conference. It could be a panel committee, or people who are trying to review your grant application, any of the above. But nevertheless, you still need to be good in oral and written communication. Plus, you should have good body language when it comes to presenting in person. Now, second thing, critical analysis. Now, this is very important. We all need to think logically. We all need to have emotional quotient. We all need to think critically, because unless you think critically and ask yourself a few questions by introspection, by the way of introspection, by introspecting yourselves, you will not get any answer to some burning questions. So if you have identified any burning problems in your area of expertise and you want to publish or patent in that area, you need to start asking yourself some critical questions. So similarly, students should also start asking critical questions to themselves. What is it that motivates them? Why do they want to apply for a particular job? Do they really like the job, or are they applying there because someone told them to apply there? So unless and until you really like what you're doing and you are doing what you really like, there won't be any creativity or innovation. Because see, creativity and fear cannot coexist. They never do in the minds of an innovator. In order to be a good innovator, you have to be creative, you have to imagine, and in order to do that, you cannot have any kind of fear or intimidation in your mind. You should never get intimidated by anything, and for that to happen, you have to think logically, you have to think critically, and find out something interesting, something that motivates and inspires you. So that's what I mean by critical analysis. This leads to Critical analysis leads to a lot of positive things, include creativity, innovation, and so many other things. Next thing is leadership. Now, leadership is also very critical, regardless of where you are working. At some point, you will always be a leader. You may not be a leader at your workplace, but perhaps among your group of friends, you're a leader, or probably at home, you're a leader. Somewhere, you're a leader. So what I'm trying to say here is we all need leadership skills at some point, at some place or the other. We have always played leadership roles. You knowingly or unknowingly may have played a leadership role, but that's why it's so important. Then we have to always ensure positive environments for our employees and students and everybody. Then and you should also tell your students about the same. Never react angrily, never suddenly give replies in a hurry. What you have to do is you have to think carefully. And most people, I'll tell you three very simple sentences, which if you remember, you will be really successful in life. First one, the average people or amateurs, they, once they hear something, they reply to react. The average person replies to react. The intelligent person, you know what the person does? They reply to respond. They reply to respond, and response is better than a reaction. But you know what the wise person does? They listen, and they, even before replying, they understand. So they listen to understand. So first two, they either listen to reply or listen to respond, but the wise person always and only listens to understand first. And once he or she understands what is being said to him or her, only then the person tries to share his or her thoughts. So that's what I mean by listening. And listening is a very important skill, a rarity these days, but we all have to sharpen that skill and be positive. Then teamwork, of course, teamwork again, it needs effective communication, leadership. So many of these things are interrelated. No one thing is like isolated. Then work ethic. I think I delivered an entire webinar today morning from 11 to 1 on ethics. So by now, I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. And if you did not get a chance to attend it, it's going to be posted on YouTube, so you can always go and check it there. Check it out there. Then I'll also go through a few miscellaneous but nevertheless important soft skills and how they can help your students nail that job interview. Now, some of the missing soft skills. Now, I was basically instrumental in organizing an international conference on transformations in engineering education. And about 17, 18 people came from the United States, Australia, and probably one more country. And all of them were like successful academicians. And some people from industry also visited. There were also some people from India. They were industrialists and CEOs. Lots of really resourceful people came. So all of them had one thing in common. They had some complaints about students because they said most of the students that they hire do not have the necessary soft skills. So now what they told me is, if there is a soft skills deficiency, it leads to low employability, because you may be good in your area, but if you go to the company and start working and you just sit quietly at your desk and don't talk to anybody, and things cannot get done. You have to effectively communicate, you have to take quick decisions, you have to attend meetings, you have to deliver presentations, so many things, and you have to do all this with enthusiasm, not because you are forced to do it or because you are earning a salary, that's why you have to do it. No, you have to do it with compassion. You have to do it with passion. You have to do it with a lot of passion and commitment and a lot of enthusiasm and willingness. That's when you can actually climb up the corporate ladder, or any ladder for that matter. Then what's the irony? Many educational institutes are still not focusing on soft skills development. And I'm really glad that in collaboration with AICTE, and thanks to AICTE for sponsoring this webinar, I'm glad that the B.S. Abdul Rahman Crescent Institute of Science and Technology has taken this fantastic initiative. So I'm really happy that they have undertaken this mission. Now, meanwhile, as I said in my previous webinar, finishing schools are doing brisk business in cities like Bangalore and also elsewhere. But if we start teaching students about these things, if we start organizing more such sessions at the university or college level itself, then our graduates will be really in huge demand in the corporate world or in the job market. So we must ensure, we must try our best to impart these skills to our students. Okay, now let me get started directly with some basic information. Now, first of all, let me tell you one very important thing. Regardless of where you apply, you may be applying for an academic job, you may be applying in industry, for an industry job, you may be applying for a government job. Regardless of where you apply, one thing is in common: you either need to submit a resume or a CV along with a cover letter, right? So first of all, I see many of the CVs and resumes, some of the basic things are missing. So let me share a very standard recommendation with you. You should put your name, then there is something called as a headline. I have put it in red intentionally. Then you should provide your email, your LinkedIn page link. By the way, many students don't even have a LinkedIn account. So you must make it a point not just to have your LinkedIn profile, but you should be very active on LinkedIn. You should like posts, you should post interesting content, you must start getting followers, you must do lots of things much before you start applying for jobs. I'll tell you why later on. At the end of this presentation, I'll share you a real story based on what happened, and it is a true story based on LinkedIn, based on LinkedIn recruitment. What exactly happened? It's a very interesting story. I'll tell it towards the end of this webinar. Without mistake, add the ISD code. Sometimes an employer from abroad might want to hire you or at least talk to you. Then if you don't even provide the international dialing code, ISD code, then you're doing a disfavor. So you have to always ensure that your CV or resume, the top section has all this information: LinkedIn link, email, phone number, name. If you have a PhD, then whatever, comma PhD, and then the headline. This is there in very few CVs or resumes, so make sure you add it in yours. What are you good at? Mention it right away at the top. Ideation for YouTube videos, content creation, marketing, SEO, technical communication. See, this is what they do on LinkedIn. So basically, you can carry over the same and do it to your CV. You can also include these things in your CV or resume. And finally, last but not the least, make sure all of these links, like for example, the LinkedIn link that appears in blue, it should actually be clickable, because what happened one day, I generated a PDF file and and I found out that the link was appearing in blue, but when I tried to click on it, it was not going anywhere. Yeah, you'll be shocked. It happens actually, yes. So what I would say is, go to some online, there are many websites, small PDF, large PDF, whatever. So just say .doc to PDF, or, so basically, if you convert your doc to a PDF file and try to click on it, it should be clickable. Now, most importantly, only a few employers, and this is very important, listen to me very carefully. I just mentioned something about a PDF file, but now I'm requesting you to listen very carefully. Why? Because only a few select employers, I'm saying it again, only a few select employers ask job applicants to submit their CVs or resumes along with cover letters as PDF files. Most employers would rather prefer to have Word documents instead of PDF files. Why? Because most of these employers have applicant tracking systems, and applicant tracking systems is easy for them to read Word documents as compared to PDF files. So that's the reason. So don't use PDF files for your resumes and CVs. Use simple Word documents, because they are easily programs can easily scan them, and you will not get automatically rejected, because what happens is many applicant tracking systems have filters based on keywords. So if certain keywords are not there, or they are there at a lower frequency, then your application automatically gets rejected there itself. So make sure you have the right keywords that are relevant to your industry. Also, don't do the opposite. Don't stuff your CV or resume with too many keywords. All right, so that's it for the first slide. Second slide, resume versus CV. What's the difference? See, basically, nowadays the industry standard, at least for students and beginners, for academic positions, it's different. They generally prefer a CV, and CV can have comprehensive details about your accomplishments in a reverse chronological order. What is the reverse chronological order? What it means is latest first. What is your latest achievement? What is your latest accomplishment? What's your latest publication? What grant did you get recently? You have to mention that first. So that's what I mean by the reverse chronological order. So regardless of whether you are sharing your CV or resume, you should always have a reverse chronological order, latest first. The difference between a resume and a CV is that a resume is presents a comprehensive picture of all of your achievements and awards and everything else, but a resume presents a very concise and crisp picture of the same. And generally in the job market, they prefer resumes, because see, who has the time to go through such a huge CV? They don't. Nobody has the time to do that. Yeah, they, on an average, people, recruiters and hiring manager, this is an inside secret, I'm telling you because I have myself been a recruiter. People spend only a few seconds looking at your resume. Resume, first of all, it's a smaller version of your CV. Even then, recruiters spend seconds on your resume. So just imagine what will happen if you submit a huge document. Nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to read it unless you are a very distinguished professor and your accomplishments are so huge that you have to have a 100-page CV. Yes, I personally know a professor who has a 100-page long CV, but that's a rare case. Most other people should have a resume that is 1 or 2 pages long, and at the most, if you are having a CV, probably a few more pages long. CV ideally, I mean, CV generally there is no constraint as such, but keep it as short as possible. But resume is strictly 1 or 2 pages, very rarely 3 pages, generally 1 or 2 pages. Then avoid unusual formatting. Don't try to make your CV or resume stand out by using unusual colors, font types, some very weird formatting. Because if you do so, what employers will think is that this person is trying to attract attention through design, so the content will be missing. So they'll say that I'm sure this person does not know anything because his CV or resume looks so attractive. Clearly he does not understand what he's talking about. That's what you'll make such an impression, so avoid being very creative, and don't try to use colors and decorations or all of those things. Be very professional, keep it simple, have a simple CV or resume. Let the resume and CV be attractive, not because of the font color and font size and other things, but because of its content. Content is king. If you are really good in your subject area, you don't need anything else to speak about, to speak for yourself. Your application will really stand out if you are good at whatever area you are working in, or whatever project you are working on. Okay, formatting. Now, if you go to Microsoft Word, many all CVs and resumes have number ranges. Like I worked as a manager from 2019 to 2021 here. I worked as a postdoctoral fellow for between like these two dates, 2007 to the whatever. And sometimes, you can also give the month. So what you have to do is whenever there are number ranges, don't use a hyphen, use an N dash. That is the most professional way of representing number ranges. And the screenshot shows you where to look for an N dash. If you go to Microsoft Word, under symbols, special characters, there is something called as N dash. It is inserted between two numbers, and it is basically used to indicate number ranges. And for those of you who have already submitted manuscripts to journals, you must already be knowing that number ranges are always indicated by using an N dash, by inserting an N dash. Okay, now let's go and see a few things about formatting. Basically, use a simple MS Word of a document. You can get your inspiration from several online sources. You can also have a look at templates, but make sure you never insert tables. Never insert tables in your CV or resume, because what happens is when you upload your CV or resume, you don't know what that table is going to get converted into. So keep it very simple, basic text, and at the most you can use bullet points and highlighting like bold and italics. That's it. Don't try too many other things. So make your CV or resume stand out because it is legitimate, and because you're good at what you're doing, and because you know your stuff, not because you're using some great template or fancy style. Then once again, content is king. Do not spend too much time in finding the right template. Your friend may say, oh, this template can get you a job of 1 lakh. That template can give you a job of 3 lakhs. Don't fall in that trap. Don't ever do that. I have myself been a recruiter. I ignore formatting completely. I just look at the basic thing. Is the person good? Does the person know what he's trying to say? Is the communication okay? Has the person done something extraordinary? Has he or got some recognition? Okay, looks like a legitimate application. Let me go ahead and read further. I don't even look at the design or anything else. And that happens with many other people. So don't spend time in that. Spend more time in getting the right qualifications, in studying hard, in presenting at conferences, in doing creative things. You must also do a lot of other things so that your application stands out. And we'll talk about those things. All right. Now, sometimes what happens is, even in today's times, many recruiters, they print out your CV or resume, and when you go for the interview, there are at least 10 other people who are also going to interview on the same day for the same position along with you. So sometimes what happens is somebody's page number 2 can get mixed with your page number 2. So in order to prevent that from happening, you have to put your name at the bottom as a footer at the bottom of every single page of your CV or resume. So that way, even if at your employer's place where you are going for the interview, if they don't have any stapler pins, or if something happens and they run out of stapler pins, your papers will not end up mixing with somebody else's, or vice versa, because your name is there, so they'll right away know that this belongs to you and not to someone else, and vice versa. So make sure you insert your name in the footer section. Okay, now very important thing. I have seen literally hundreds of applications, and I'm really surprised to see spelling and grammar mistakes. It's a huge surprise. I see spelling and grammar mistakes in many, more than 70-80% of the applications very easily. Give me a resume, give me a CV, I'll spot at least one grammatical error. I bet on that, because I've seen so many CVs and resumes so far. They always have some mistake. I have yet to see a flawless resume or CV. I mean, I might have someone. I could be exaggerating. I'm not denying that no such thing exists. There are some CVs and resumes that are really up to the mark and free of errors. But that only happens when you carefully read your CV or resume, and of course also your cover letter. So if you are able to do it, great. If not, take help, seek help from experts. There are experts. You can also install Grammarly. Just go to grammarly.com. It detects errors that are not usually detected even by Microsoft Word. Like for example, today just try doing this. Open a Microsoft Word document and try typing this sentence: I like red flowers. Microsoft Word will not detect any error when you try to run your spell check. But if you run Grammarly, it will say, did you mean to say RED red instead of READ red? See, that's the difference. I have myself used Grammarly. It's a great software. It's a great tool. I think it's available for free, but the premium version you have to pay something. But it's still worth it, because the premium version is kind of really good. Well, the basic version still does a good job, so you can go for it. But if your CV or resume needs excessive editing, then I'll probably recommend the premium version. Sometimes even Grammarly is not sufficient. So in that case, you have to take help. You have to seek help from industry professionals. Like I'll give you two names. I used to freelance as a scientific editor for Editage, 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 also known by the name Cactus Communications. Their selection rate is very low, less than 1%. I got selected actually, and somebody told me it's like 0.6%, but I got selected there, and I edited more than 113 manuscripts, scientific manuscripts. I still do it for a fee. So if somebody wants me to edit a manuscript, I can do that for a fee. Because I also work full time, so I have to manage those things. So long story short, what I'm trying to say here is industry professionals can be hired. They can proofread and give you feedback. And once your CV or resume is error free, then you can safely submit it on any jobs website. Okay, so what are the standard jobs websites? There are so many. Naukri.com, then LinkedIn, Monster. There are so many, plenty and plenty and plenty of websites. So all of you know that, so I don't have to emphasize too much on that. But nevertheless, I need to let everybody know that all of us should have our own LinkedIn profile, and it should be active. Okay. Okay, the next guideline, you have to use action words at the beginning of every sentence. Now, what are action words? Whenever you do something, let's say you organize a conference, you can always say, I organized a conference, then I facilitated something, and you have to use numbers. Merely saying that you organized the conference and you boosted the sales does not help much. You have to throw numbers at your employer, prospective employer, and impress the employer by sharing some quantitative facts, because numbers never lie. So look at the sentence here on the left, what the person wrote here on the left and what the person ended up getting on the right after some experts intervened. So the sentence on the left, digital marketing of student conference approached 100 students and got 20 attendees finally. Nobody in the corporate world is going to read this sentence. What's the standard way of saying this? Undertook digital marketing for a student conference and obtained a conversion rate of 20%. So see, there are how many verbs here, how many action words? Undertook, obtained, huh? And there is a number, 20%. See? And there is an industry phrase here, conversion rate. And there's one more, digital marketing. See? So this is how you have to convert ordinary looking sentences into sentences that can make an impact, sentences that have a punch. Undertook digital marketing, organized a conference, and then share some numbers, and do all those things. So that's how you have to make your application package more attractive, and you have to make it stand out. Begin every single sentence on your CV or resume with an action word without exception. If you look at my CV, you will see, or my resume, every single sentence begins with an action word. Facilitated, organized, boosted, conducted, so many things. All right, so some of the common mistakes. Never mention anything about your religious affiliation, your caste, all those details are unnecessary, completely unnecessary. Date of birth is also completely unnecessary. Although I would say, some very strange employers sometimes ask for date of birth, but then you can give it separately. You don't have to mention it on your CV or resume anywhere. So, but at all costs, avoid mentioning your caste, religion, and other things that are completely irrelevant to your job application. Now, don't mention irrelevant hobbies. That somebody mentioned in an application that I love dancing and I like jumping on weekends. Now, I really don't care if you dance on a Sunday or if you jump on a Wednesday. For me, what matters is, are you good in marketing? Are you good in digital marketing? Are you a good biochemist? Are you a good engineer? Are you good in soft skills? Whether you dance or whether you jump or whether you swim makes no difference to me, because I'm not going to put my money on I'm not going to invest my money on your swimming skills or your dancing skills or your singing skills. I'm going to hire you for your professional skills, right? So skip this section. Don't include hobbies at all. I would rather say this is a very boring section. I don't like to read this section unless of course the hobby is really demonstrating something relevant. So let's say you're working at some place and you need some really good voice quality. They're hiring you as a person who can do professional voiceovers. Then you can always say that one of my hobbies is singing and doing voiceovers. That's a different scenario. But for the rest of us, don't really need to mention these things like I like football and cricket, and don't even mention cricket, please. We all know that you like cricket or cooking or whatever, kabaddi. Everybody knows that. So let's not mention that. Then look at the third point. You should not constantly keep changing your font type and use some color. It's very distracting, and it's kind of very boring and odd, and employers immediately tend to believe that you lack the essential skills, and that's why, just to attract attention, you're trying these gimmicks. So avoid these things at all costs. Now, don't emphasize on the wrong skill set. So for example, let's say I'm applying for a research job and I want to join a pharmaceutical company. then I would be better off mentioning about my experience as an intern than mentioning something about how good of a teacher I am. Like I can completely omit an entire section based on my teaching experience. Perhaps in some cases that may not be suitable, but you have to decide on a case by case basis. That's why I tell people, don't use the same CV or resume for all job applications. Very carefully look at the job description, study the company profile, and then make changes to your CV or resume. Your CV or resume should always be dynamic. I mean, not all the entire section, but some portions of it should always be dynamic. Like whether or not to include certain work experiences depends on where you are applying. So this is just an example. Okay, then some of the common mistakes. Uh, what uh, what you have to avoid is using these phrases. These are very overused phrases like hardworking student, fast learner. The moment I see this, I say, "Oh my God, this person has copied from somewhere." So it's very boring, very unoriginal, and I don't even read. After that line, I immediately know that the person is just trying to make up for some deficiencies by using some fantastic language. Don't do that. Don't say you're hardworking. Don't say you're a fast learner. Demonstrate it through numbers. If you have the right achievements to your credit, and if you have the right numbers, just like we saw in the previous slide, throw them at your employer. Say that you undertook digital marketing for a student conference and obtained a conversion rate of 20% instead of saying that you are very good at marketing. Don't. So do you get my point? So that's how you should highlight yourself. That's how you should sell yourself. Now, don't include a photograph. It's really funny when I see many CVs, uh, even today. They include photographs. Now, we really don't care about your genetics, how you look. That's the last thing. I mean, we never even would be interested in knowing that. How you look has no bearing on your job application. We are not here to work as film actors. We are not applied for a job in Hollywood or Bollywood. So let's not include photos. I see photos and CVs even today in many CVs and applications. Don't do that unless it's a requirement. So now some strange employers ask you to, some like government positions, they ask you to affix like a photograph, passport size photograph. Then unfortunately you have to fix it. But that's the only exception. At all other places, you should never use your photograph anywhere. One more reason why you should not insert your photograph. There is a chance of discrimination, hidden discrimination, because if you include your photograph, immediately the person will know a certain things, and even before reading your CV or resume, you may get disqualified because the person at the back of his mind or her mind may do some calculations and say, let's skip this person. So don't. That's one more reason why you should never include your photograph. Now, common mistakes, a few other common mistakes. You have to, first of all, add industry relevant keywords. So let's say you are applying for the job of, let's say what's the job? Quality assurance or chemical hygiene officer, chemical safety officer. So you should have the relevant keywords. If you're applying for a job in a pharmaceutical industry and they need someone who knows what is synthetic organic chemistry, what is drug design, all those things. What are clinical trials? You have to make sure that your CV, cover letter, resume have the right amount of keywords, and also you should not go to the other extreme and overstuff your CV or resume with too many keywords. That's also not very professional. Now, one reason why I said you should use Word files instead of PDF is because applicant tracking systems, they scan for keywords and they employees many times set filters. So if certain keywords are not there, your application gets rejected right away in the first screen itself, which is not an ideal thing to happen. So in order to prevent that, make sure you have the right keywords. Uh, don't include references. If somebody asks for references, you can always provide them separately in another sheet, because see, the list of references will end up taking valuable space in your resume or CV, and that space you can use for highlighting some very important accomplishments which you may not be able to highlight otherwise because of space limitations. Don't choose odd file names. Now the right so see, what happens is, I'll tell you why. Many employers, as soon as they get an application, they download it. Now when they download it, it goes to the downloads folder. Now in the downloads folder, there are so many files that have very similar names, like job application 123 64 job 2021, so it can get easily mixed up. But if it has your name, then even if it gets accidentally mixed up, your potential employer can still go and find it. They just have to search for your name, and that's it. There's your CV. So that's why you should also name your file correctly. You should have your name on your, you should include your name in your, you should name it accordingly. Now, you should never use any, you should minimize the use of PDF files, just like I mentioned, for the same reason I mentioned before. Okay, now one very important thing is, whenever you are done with your CV drafting or resume drafting, you must make it a point to share it with your colleagues and with your mentors. Because what happens if you don't share is, because is you may actually carry over a few mistakes, and you may carry them along with you for years, and you may notice the mistake after 10 years, and then by that time all job opportunities might have gone. So in order to prevent such a scenario, you have to consult your mentors and your advisors or your thesis supervisors. And also, if you are a mentor or an advisor or a thesis supervisor or a university academician, instructor, you have to give feedback to your students in a timely manner, because students are new to this thing, right? So they need help from you. Then you should make it a point to update your resume or CV with your most recent and relevant achievements. Like if you won the first prize in a football competition, that's not relevant. But if you won the first prize in a science exhibition, probably that is important. So, or if you won something at a competition that shows, that demonstrates your leadership skills, then that is also important. But otherwise, don't include other minor accomplishments, and include the latest ones without fail at the top. Now, don't ever use bizarre emails. Now, many people, I get emails from some weird addresses, like jumping boy 68 at gmail.com, and some weird addresses. So don't do that. Have some legitimate address. It should have simply your name, your last name, and that's it, at whatever gmail.com. Don't ever choose weak action words. So it would be really funny if you say that I watched my company grow significantly. Instead, what you should say is, you boosted the annual sales of your company by 33%. Merely watching your company grow doesn't say much about yourself. In fact, it showcases you in a very negative way. It showcases you as a pessimistic or a very, very lazy person who simply watches things and does nothing. So instead of saying you watched your company grow, you have to ensure that you use the right action words. This is just one example. There are many other examples. Now, don't ever copy the job description. Like, for example, uh, you know, let's say you are applying for a particular job, let's say digital marketing, and you know what is the job description. So don't try to manipulate your CV and make it look such that it will encompass or include everything that is there in the job description. Even if you have not done any of those things, that is cheating. because well, you will go through and you will be given a you'll be called for interview, but then during the interview everything will be very clear, because then people will know that whatever you stated in your CV or resume was merely copied from the job description, and you really never did those things yourself. Although you claim that you did them, you never really did. So be truthful. Don't copy job descriptions. If you have done it, mention it. If you have not done it, don't mention it. Be truthful, be honest. Now, yeah, so I already mentioned this. Be truthful, never lie on your CV or resume. All right. Then one very important thing here, just like I mentioned before, you should always customize your CV or resume. This is a very common mistake. Not customizing your CV or resume is a very common mistake, because nowadays what happens is on LinkedIn you can apply. There is something called as one-click application, so you can instantly apply, and that makes it easy for you to apply. I mean, I won't say don't do that, but at least when you upload your CV or resume during the last step, at least make sure it aligns well with what the employer is trying to look at. Is trying to, the skills that the employer wants in you. So let's say sometimes what may happen is the employer may say that we are looking for somebody who is good in YouTube video creation, and in your CV, in your resume, you may have said that you are a digital content creator. Now you basically said the same thing but in a different way. But if you include the keyword YouTube, and your potential employer notices it, then the odds of your application getting more attention increases significantly. And that's why I'm saying, don't upload generic CVs and resumes everywhere. Do a little bit of homework and then tweak it a little bit so as to adjust some keywords that are necessary for that particular job type, as long as you really did it. Again, once again I'm saying it, repeating it. Only include it if you have really done it, just so that you don't miss it. But don't include it if you have not done it, because that is not fair. Then you should always have a custom cover letter. Do not ever include generic cover letters in your application package. You have to first of all write very specifically to the company, discuss things about the company, and we'll discuss more about this later. But what I'm trying to say here is you should have a very customized cover letter. It should never be generic. Do not include extremely boring, lengthy paragraphs. Nobody, including myself, nobody has the time to read those paragraphs. Never do that. Use bullet points. All of your achievements, everything that you do, everything should be listed as bullet points, and in the form of bullet points. And every sentence should start, or every bullet point rather, should start with action words. And that's how you should basically draft your CV or resume. Then just skip the objective. Nowadays it's completely like very outdated. Nobody really uses that, so don't even bother. Then don't make very tall claims, like don't say that you are the best salesman in India. You are really truly fantastic international marketing expert. Don't do that. Let your accomplishments speak for themselves. Let your worth be known to your employer through your numbers. Share numbers. Share your quantitative achievements. What percent increase did you bring in? How much sales increase happened when you were there? What happened? Was there an increase in readership? Was there an increase in some other metric? Did the engagement of your blog go up? Did the, what's that other thing? When customers visit a website and they just exit the browser without even looking at the other things, so there's a term for that. And that should also be within the right limits. And if you have a very good set of numbers with you, good engagement ratio, like for example, if you're uploading videos to YouTube, if you have good engagement metrics, What do I mean by engagement metrics? Likes, comments, shares, subscribe, how many people have subscribed to your channel, all those things. How many websites have embedded your videos, so forth and so on. So if you have good numbers that you can share with your employer, do that. And you should always highlight your accomplishments quantitatively in terms of numbers using the right action words. I'm constantly repeating this so that you will never forget it, because I constantly keep seeing CVs and resumes where there are no action words and where there are no numbers. And as soon as I see no numbers and no action words, I simply refuse to read the CV or resume. I just quickly scan through. I say, oh yeah, looks like an average CV. Let's skip it. I don't even bother. But if I see achievements in terms of numbers, and I agree that all the time you cannot have accomplishments in terms of numbers, but at least wherever possible, and at least try to include action words, if not anything else, right? Okay, now there are some other common mistakes. People may in fact make new mistakes, and whatever I told you so far are not the only mistakes, but I cannot go and imagine every possible mistake on earth. So what I'm trying to say here is basically don't go too much into this territory, like what mistakes people make, but try to stick to the basic guidelines that I'm sharing with you today, or the guidelines that many other websites also share. If you stick to those guidelines, you'll be fine. And then of course you have to proofread your document and then get feedback and make improvements accordingly. Okay, time to have some fun, because I know it's afternoon time and people are tired. So let's try to have some fun. Just go through these really funny mistakes made by real people from the real world. Number one, hobbies. I enjoy cooking Chinese and Italians. I know how much we don't like China, but that does not still give you the permission to cook Chinese people. You can cook Chinese food, but don't cook Chinese people. So that's the first one. What the person meant to say is he loves cooking Chinese and Italian food, but what he or she ended up saying is that he or she loves enjoys cooking Chinese and Italians, as in like people. Second one, my recent qualification seems hugely detrimental. Now the person is using this word just for the sake of it, without understanding its meaning. What is the meaning of detrimental? Detrimental means something that negatively affects a particular thing. So if you say that my recent qualification seem to be negatively affecting my career, then who is going to hire you? So that's why you have to really proofread your CV or resume very carefully and avoid such funny things. Then a job applicant actually included a reference letter from his mother. Never do that. Like, this is a real life story. Somebody did that actually. I'm surprised, but yeah, it happened. Next sentence. What are the candidate's strong points? Strong work ethic, attention to detail, discipline, attention to detail, etc. What's the problem here? The person has mentioned attention to detail twice. Isn't that ironical? It is. So you have to be very careful. Next one, hobbies. Playing with my two dogs. One belongs to my friend, but that's okay. Now, I really don't care if it belongs to your friend, or if it belongs to your wife, or it belongs to some random person. I really don't care. What I care about is, are you a good scientist? Are you a good engineer? That's it. Whether you play with cats or dogs or alligators or cockroaches makes no difference to me. I'll invest my money in you only if you are good in your professional skills. So that's why I keep saying, don't mention unnecessary things in your CV or resume ever. Next one. This is a very recent example. I recently advertised somewhere, and one applicant actually wrote this: if hired, I'll immediately blow up your brand image. What he meant to say is, he or she, what the person meant to say is that he'll help me grow my brand. But what he ended up saying, he or she, is that they'll completely destroy my brand, because the meaning of blow up is also like explode. So in a negative way. So the person, if I hire the person, he or she is going to destroy my brand. So why should I hire him or her? Then team president, 1890 to 1994. Wow, that's a really, really old, super old applicant. Now, it's very difficult to hire such applicants because of advanced age. Okay, last one. Bilingual in 3 languages. How is that even possible? Bilingual itself means two, and you're writing three. So that you should all avoid these mistakes. And that's why just go to Google and search for funny mistakes that people make on in resumes and CVs. You will come across thousands and thousands of mistakes. Avoid all of them. All right, now let's switch to the next section. Very important section, cover letter. Cover letters are really important, and many people don't understand the significance of cover letters. Cover letters can make or break your job application. Why? Because many employers, even before seeing your CV or resume, they quickly scan your cover letter. If they find it interesting, only then they take the effort to go through your CV or resume. It happens at some places, you know. So you have to make it a point to really write a good cover letter. And very soon I'll tell you how. But let's see a few important things here. First of all, you have to do your homework. Let's say you are applying for a job at a particular company. You have to go to their website. You have to go to their LinkedIn page. You have to go to the LinkedIn pages of the company's employees. You can do it discreetly. Like you can change the settings of your LinkedIn profile in such a way that nobody will know who has visited. Right? There are some privacy settings, but you can still visit. Then do some detective work, get some background information, do your homework, and then draft your cover letter based on that intel, business intel. Yes, you have to play the role of detective. You have to be detectives when you search for jobs, you know, because if you don't do that, your employer is anyway going to play the role of detective. So if they do it, why not you? You can do it. You have the right to do it. Then do it. Let's do it. So you have to gather all this background information and make great use of it in drafting, while drafting your cover letter. How? I'll tell you later on. All right. Then see their social media handles, gather all the information, and never draft a generic cover letter. It has to be very specific, custom cover letter. Now, the difference between CV resume and cover letter is CV resume highlight everything from your past or present, whereas cover letter basically tells you what promise you hold for the company, like why at all the employer should think about hiring you. That's the difference between a cover letter and a CV or a resume. So always keep this in mind. Then you also have to think about from this angle, what is your prospective employers, what are your prospective employers' priorities? What are their current business interests, current or future, and or sometimes even past business interests? And then you have to customize your cover letter accordingly. You also have to demonstrate some of your transferable skills. For example, your amazing and mind-boggling communication skills. You can demonstrate them through your written communication by writing a very powerful and attractive, enticing cover letter. You have to throw in numbers again, but just don't copy and paste sentences from your resume or CV. Just don't be lazy, take some extra effort, and then share the numbers, but do it in a different way. Okay, now we are coming to a very important section. First of all, you have to grab attention with a very strong opening. See, there are thousands of people applying for jobs. At any given point, just go to LinkedIn and see. As soon as a job opening gets advertised, you have at least 100 people applying for that job. How will your application stand out from the rest? This is how it will. If you have a strong opening, the prospective employer will care to read about you further. So this is an example. I am an established YouTube partner with a monetized YouTube channel. The name of the channel is Videonium. It has 10 million plus views, 14,000 subscribers, 1,000 posts. And I believe that I can meaningfully contribute to your ... This is a sentence actually from my CV. I have used it successfully. And I am telling this to you because I have used it successfully. It grabs attention. That's why I thought of sharing this here. So this is just an example. Depending on your discipline and area of expertise, you can include and you should include another sentence. But this sentence will give you an idea about how to start drafting your cover letter and what to highlight. Then you should tell your prospective employer why that particular job is so interesting and why you feel interested in that job opportunity. What is so unique? What drives you? What motivates you? And then what you can bring to the table if hired. See this example. I'm quoting this from Harvard Business Review. I'm an environmental fundraising professional with 15 years of experience, and I would love to bring my expertise and enthusiasm to your growing development team. The person took the effort to find out that the company was trying to expand its development team. The person also threw in a number and also shared the fact that he or she is an environmental fundraising professional. Um, so all these things need to be highlighted. Now there are specific positions where these things need to be highlighted, like where should that the sentence from the first example, where should it go, and where should the second example go. I'll talk about it very soon. Then you have to show your worth and prove your capacity, through your cover letter. You have to show that you are indeed capable of handling complex situations. You're a you're a good problem solver. So how do you do that? Look at this sentence or example rather. Client outreach through conventional digital marketing is becoming fast obsolete. Based on my experience as a whatever digital marketing expert, I can say with confidence that such and such a techniques works, something on those lines. So if you do something, if you include something like this, the employer will think, oh my god, this person seems different from the rest of the herd. He or she is presenting a unique perspective. Let me call him and schedule a date for the interview. Let me interview this person. So that's how you get your interview offer. You have to nail it through your cover letter. And of course, your CV and resume has to be good, but your cover letter as well. Then you have to convey, of course, your willingness, your enthusiasm, how spirited you are, how positive you feel about joining that particular employer. Don't stretch sentences so much that people get bored reading your whatever you have to offer. Just keep it simple, keep it short. Brevity makes a lot of difference. Be very concise and yet uh, try to communicate the essential things by being concise but not inaccurate. You have to be concise and accurate. Don't be concise and inaccurate. Be concise and brief but also accurate. Then in short, what you have to do is you have to put yourself into the foot or into the shoes of your employer, prospective employer, and you yourself ask the question to your own mind or to your own heart, why should I hire myself? And if you get a positive answer, then that's good. If you don't, then you better start working on your CV, resume, cover letter, or better start gaining some additional skill sets. Because if you cannot hire yourself, who else will? So this is very critical. Put yourself into the shoes of the employer and ask the question, why should I hire myself? This is a very good strategy. Okay. Now, this is very critical, and I would encourage all of you to go to YouTube and check the video corresponding to this presentation at some future time point, because you'll need this all the time. Cover letter generally has 3 to 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph is the opening paragraph. It needs to have a solid punch to grab their attention, to grab the attention of prospective employers. The second paragraph should clearly tell the prospective employer how you can add value to their business. And you can do this by citing some examples. What examples? Basically, your accomplishments, and how do you share them? Again, using action words and by sharing numbers. And then the accomplishments should be such that they should be relevant to the company's business interests or priorities. Like you, if you did something amazing in one field, but you are applying to a related field, not exactly that field, then that particular accomplishment may or may not be relevant, whereas some other accomplishment could be maybe more relevant. So you have to choose accordingly, and you have to choose wisely. So that's what you have to do. Then you have to also, based on your homework, identify some problem areas. So let's say a company has been trying to manufacture a product, but nevertheless, if you look at their customer reviews online on Amazon or some other website, you constantly see that clients are always complaining about something. So then during the interview and also in the cover letter, you can clearly say, Ki, see, I know that your product X has this problem and I can actually fix it using this strategy. Oh my God, very few people do that. And if you are the one, you will get selected. You will get the offer right away. People will have high regards for you, because if you are solving their problem at that stage in the cover letter, imagine what will happen if they hire you. And that's how you can get the job opportunity. And that's how, and this is a secret which very few people will share with you. See, employers are always looking for a close fit. If you align very well with their requirements, you are in. If you don't, you are out. It's as simple as that. So try to blend yourself with the employer's requirements as much as possible. Do your homework, go to their website, go to their LinkedIn page, find out everything, network with people, find out all about the company. And then once you have the information, just bombard them with legitimate answers using your intelligence. And there you go, you will get the job. Closing paragraph. Now you have to very briefly summarize again what you can bring in. Again, don't copy and paste. You have to just very concisely and briefly summarize. Again, brevity matters. And then you have to close your cover letter with a positive note saying that, yeah, I look forward to an enthusiastic response from your office, and please feel free to contact me, blah, 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 whatever. So, and make sure when you say that, give the right number and email. Once what happened is somebody used a generic cover letter and all cover letters had the wrong email, so the person never got any job offer. So never do that. Make sure you include the right contact information as well. So these are the three parts of a cover letter. Sometimes people have 4 paragraphs, but I would recommend 3 because smaller the better. Brevity matters. Be concise, be accurate, be smart, and sell yourself well. All right. So let's move on to the next part. We are done with the CV part, resume, cover letter, and now we are here discussing about the interview. Let's discuss that. Interview. Now, first of all, you have to dress professionally. Now, you don't need to buy any expensive suits or anything. See, many employers know that students don't have so much money to buy expensive suits and business attire, jackets, and silk ties. So that's fine. We all know that. But try your best to dress professionally. Don't dress as if you are, working from home. I mean, I have to say this because I saw a funny post on LinkedIn recently that many people, they attend webinars and they turn on their cameras and they are dressed in their pajamas and nightgowns. So don't do that. You have to dress up professionally. Why? Because if you dress up professionally, even when you are working from home, it creates an environment. See, right now, I am not visible to you. My camera is switched off. I am not even visible. But even then, I am wearing a formal shirt. I am not sitting in a t-shirt. If I switch on the camera, I can show it to you right now. I am wearing a formal shirt. Why? Because it creates an environment, and I am also using my hands while I am talking to you. You may not see it, but I am using my hands. Why? Because it makes my communication effective. And that's why I'm doing this. And that's why all of us should do this during the interview. I'm doing this during a webinar. All of us should do this during interviews. I mean, if you are an educator, you should tell your students to do it during their interviews. You have to, they have to dress professionally, they have to comb their hair well, they have to groom well, they have to cut the nails. I'm sorry to discuss this here, but I see many applicants who are untidy, their nails are not cut. I understand if they have not got a haircut. This is the pandemic time, so I can excuse them for that. But I cannot excuse people for not cutting their nails. There is no excuse for that. In fact, they should cut their nails more often during the pandemic, if not their hair. So you have to groom yourself well. Then you have to reach on time. Many applicants, what they do is, let's say in a city like Mumbai, where the streets can get crowded and clogged at any time. If your interview is at 9 a.m., you cannot start from home at 8:30. You are guaranteed to miss the interview. I can guarantee, I can vouch for that, because the traffic in Mumbai is such that any signal you wait, you have to wait for at least 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, and there are at least five such signals. So that's 25 minutes right there, you know, or 15 minutes right there. 3 times 5 is 15, or 5 times 5 is 25, you know. So what you have to do is you have to start early, especially if you are staying in a crowded city. If your interview is at 9, start at quarter to 8. There's no problem if you reach early. You can always hang around and go when it's your time to go in. But don't ever hurry, because what happens is, I'll tell you one more consequence. Once I was interviewing somebody. Somebody walked into my office. The person was profusely sweating, and his entire shirt was stained with sweat. The person was sweating, and then he suddenly sat. He was gasping for his breath, and then I started interviewing him. But I was kind enough to offer him a glass of water. Then I told the person, you can sit outside for 5 minutes. Once you feel okay, you can come here and let's start the interview, because I could literally see that he was gasping for his breath. So don't do that. What happens is, if you are late for an interview, you'll end up running. If you run, you will sweat, and if you sweat, it will look odd, and you will also gasp for breath. Your mouth will run dry faster, and then while answering questions, you will constantly start gulping, and then the employer will feel that you are gulping because you are feeling nervous, and so it will dramatically reduce your chances of getting the job offer, you know. So see how a small thing can catapult or snowball into a job loss. So that's why be punctual, start ahead of time, reach on time, and do everything systematically. All right. Then mind your posture. Look at how that boy is sitting. You have to sit, you have to keep your spine erect, because if you cannot do that, there's not much you can do in life, you know. Unless, I mean, I understand if people have some disabilities, I'm not at all talking about them. That's a completely different area. But all other people who have no other issues, you need to sit in a using proper posture. You have to maintain proper eye contact. Now, many people, as soon as they read this, what they do is they start staring at the employer. Now, once what happened is, somebody came to my office and the person started staring at me. I said, "Oh my God, why is this person staring at me?" I literally called HR and said, "Can you just see if there's a personality disorder?" Because the person was constantly staring at me. So, so they ran some tests, and I think eventually they found out that the person had read somewhere about eye contact, and the person like literally implemented it without even caring to learn about it further. So eye contact should be simple, like look at the person for a few seconds, look at some other place, again look at the person, then again look somewhere else. But while answering, don't ever look down. It shows lack of confidence. Then don't use bizarre body language, like sitting in a weird way, or fumbling with your hands and nails, making noise with your feet and shaking your legs, and don't do all of those things, you know. It looks very odd, and people may get a very bad impression, very bad first impression. All right. Then uh, people should not remember you because of what you're wearing. People should also not remember you because of what perfume you're wearing, and they should remember you because of what you said. And please, They should remember you because of what you said. Doesn't mean that you can say anything. They should remember you for whatever positive you said, because you can also be remembered for whatever strange things you said. Like, I once interviewed a person, and he told me and the HR manager very openly that he basically forces his students to work so hard that many of them have got blood pressure. I said, I'm sorry, but I cannot hire you, because we don't want people who commit such grave crimes or genocide, or some strange weird cult people. So no, I'm sorry, we can't hire you. And on top of that, he was asking, so do you think I'm selected? I said, yeah, of course. How can we select anyone else? I mean, no, of course I didn't say that. But jokes apart, you have to be very careful whenever you say something. Don't say something very odd, so that you're not remembered for something very odd. Okay, very few people will tell this to you, but you should make it a point to visit a dentist. Yes, I could be the only person sharing this with you, but yes, it is very important, because many times what happens is people who don't have good oral hygiene, the person who is conducting your interview, it's a very awkward situation for the person. The person can't even run away, and the person has to compulsorily sit in the room. Plus, the AC is on. So when the air conditioner is on, anything that comes off your mouth will get amplified 10 times. So you have to ensure that you have good oral hygiene. Don't eat pan and anything and go to an interview. Uh, People will immediately detect it. It is very easy to detect these things in an air conditioned room, and most employers nowadays have air conditioned environments. So make sure you go with a clean mouth, visit a dentist. Then talk very carefully to every person on your way to the interview. Let me quickly share a funny incident. I know it's afternoon time, so I think once in a while it's good to share some funny incidents. So what happened is, this guy, Jacob, he was going for an interview, and on his way, his car hit another car. So he got out of his car and started yelling at this person. He said, uh, "You are such an idiot. I'm going for some important work, and why did you suddenly apply your brakes? Now I'm getting late for my interview. You are such a nuisance." And then he said blah 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 whatever. And then of course he took down his number plate. They exchanged phone numbers, and then he made a claim with the insurance company later on. But before that, same day, he went for the interview, and as soon as he entered the interview room, you know who was sitting on the interview table? The very person with whom he had talked a few minutes ago. The very person whose car was involved in an accident. You know, the very person who applied brakes. So, what's the moral of the story? Yes, I understand that people may make mistakes while driving, but on the day of your interview, for your own interest, do not speak rudely with any person, because the person may end up interviewing you, especially in a big city. You never know who is going to interview you. So be very gentle and polite to every person. If you unfortunately meet with an accident, just handle it politely, and then take care of the rest of the things later on. But don't be rude to people. Also, one more thing, be careful about your elevator speech. In the United States, there is something called as an elevator speech. So if you meet someone from the company in the company premises, in the elevator or in the lobby, and the person starts talking to you, be very careful about what you say, because the same person may end up interviewing you. So let's say you enter an elevator or a lift, and the person says, "Hi, good morning. So are you here for an interview?" You should not say something negative about the company, like, "Yeah, I know it's a terrible company, but I'm here for an interview. Yes, yes. Hi, how are you?" Don't say that, because the person may reject you right there in the elevator. So you have to be very careful. You have to be very positive. Okay, now, uh, This is a very common question. When HR says, tell us something about yourself, you know what it actually means? The translation is, why should we hire you? Tell us something about yourself has nothing to do with your hobbies, or it has nothing to do with your religion or your other interests or what movie you watched last Monday. But tell us something about yourself entirely means the following: why should we invest our money and time in you? Why should we hire you? So, as soon as you hear that question, here's a warning: do not suddenly start selling yourself very aggressively. You can start selling yourself, no doubt, but do it very slowly. Do it step by step, because I'll tell you, there's a logical reason. If you say everything when you answer the first question, you will not be left with enough material to cover your entire interview. So start slowly, dhire dhire. Release one thing after the other, but everything that you release should be meaningful. It should have a punch. It should be concise to the point, and it should make an impact. That's how you answer interview questions. I have successfully cleared lots of interviews in the United States as well as in India, at multinational companies, at universities. So I know exactly what people ask. And now I am also hiring people. Now I am on the other side of the table. So I know what to ask, and I know how to reject people, and I know how to select people. So that's why these things are very critical. All right. So next slide. Uh, Again, I'm emphasizing on this point one more time. You have to really spend some time finding more about the company. You have to research the company website and its social media pages and the LinkedIn accounts and LinkedIn pages and everything that you can. Even if they have an app, you should probably check it out too. Do you have any contacts working at that company? Well, that would be great. Then you'll have some real great perspective about the company. And you can also always, try getting information from other sources. But regardless of what you do, you must at all costs, before your interview, gather intel about your prospective employer. You have to do that. It is not optional. You must do that. Why? Because you can use this information or this intel to custom craft, to custom design your answers, to smartly design your answers. And I'm not asking you to do anything fake. I'm just asking you to align your offerings in line with the employer's current or future business requirements. That's all I'm asking you to do. All right. Now here's a bonus tip. You know what most hiring managers and HR personnel like? They really like people who really blend fantastically with their company culture. So if you just go to Facebook and find that a company has a great work culture, once in a while they have something called as a monthly party and then a monthly recognition, rewards and recognition event. Whatever is the culture at that company, when you find something out, try to, you know, discreetly use it in your answers in some way or the other. How it entirely depends on the question asked. I mean, you don't necessarily have to use it, but you can phrase your answer in such a way that people will know that you know their culture. You know, like you can always casually mention, I just saw on your website that you have this, monthly recognition event, and that's a great initiative. I appreciate it. And then you can say something, just throw it in somewhere, so that they know that you have done the homework. You can just mention it casually during like small talk, or at many places wherever you get an opportunity. Now don't try to intentionally use that information and you insert it at the wrong place, because that may actually sound very synthetic or very
Nikhil sir? Nikhil sir?
Yes, you have to gather intent. All right, then one more bonus tip. Can you actually try out a product that the company is manufacturing currently? Or can you try out their service? Very few people will tell this to you. That's why I'm telling this to you. If you are invited for an interview, before you go there, try using at least one of the company's products and try to give them at least some feedback, some constructive feedback during the interview process. I myself, I serve on YouTube's research panel. I give advice to program managers and project managers working for YouTube through surveys and some other interactions, and they value they value my feedback, and not just mine. Many other people give feedback. So what I'm saying is, if you try to share legitimate feedback during the interview, you will be perceived as a very successful and hot candidate. So you'll end up getting the job offer most of the times. Second tip, yeah, so I think I already mentioned that sharing legitimate feedback. And one more thing, yeah, customer pain points. If you come across the company's website and if you see what products the company has to offer, and then you come across product reviews and you see some negative reviews, that's great, that's fantastic. Because the moment you see negative reviews, that's an opportunity to contribute. That's nothing but an opportunity to make a difference. So you can tell the company that I know you have launched this product recently, but I read some reviews saying that certain improvements need to be done. Based on my expertise, I have the following recommendations. Oh my God, very few people do this. If you do that, you will get selected. So these are some very really rare tips that I'm sharing with you. Not many people will share this with you. These are all insiders details. What I'm essentially trying to say here is, try your best to blend with their requirements. They have X requirements, you have Y offerings. If there is an overlap, you are hired. If there is no overlap, you are not hired. It's as simple as that. Okay, again, find out more about the team that is likely to interview you. So let's say you are going to be interviewed by a part, say the knowledge platform of a company, and you already know based on your LinkedIn research that these 4 or 5 people work for the knowledge arm of that company. Then go and check out their profiles. Go and check out what they have done. Go and check out what they have posted as responses to other people's LinkedIn posts. So that from there you can get a feel about everything. You can get to know their personality in some way. So then even before you reach the interview room, you know how to handle every person. And that's a valuable soft skill that you can use during the interview. Find out about the most recent successes and failures. If you have some legitimate feedback, share it with your prospective employer, so that let's say the company failed in launching some product. Why did it fail? It failed for a reason. So if you have a brilliant solution, share it, because not many people will go to that extra mile, take that extra effort to share that kind of feedback. If you do it, you are in. It's as simple as that. Now, in the interview, they many times ask this question: what's your biggest strength? That is relatively straightforward. Second question is a bit tricky. What's your biggest weakness? What does it mean? It means nothing but the following: how much risk is the employer taking? Did the candidate make any honest attempts to overpower the weakness? Is it a minor weakness, or is it something really major or serious? So when you share your weakness, you have to speak very carefully. First of all, even before going to the interview room, you have to ask yourself the question, what is your weakness? And don't do this on the day of the interview. Do it on the first day of your college. And please, all the university administrators and academicians, please tell this to your students. Tell them to ask this question to themselves on the first day of college. What is my weakness? And how can I overcome the weakness? How can I overpower my weakness? Biggest weakness. So in the 4 or 3 years of their college, if they can overcome that weakness, on the day of their interview, they will be in a position to demonstrate to their prospective employer how they overpowered or overcome that weakness of theirs. And that's a legitimate approach. If you adopt this approach, you will nail this question. I mean, you will nail the interview by answering this question very well. Now, again, numbers never lie. So you always have to throw legitimate numbers. I have yet to see a professional who is never able to share numbers. That's not possible. You can always dig out some numbers from somewhere. I'm not saying make up numbers. No, that is wrong, unethical, dishonest, and it's not the right thing to do. What I'm saying is try to identify some numbers by having a look at your accomplishments. I'm sure everybody has some numbers. In some rare cases, there may be no numbers, but that's okay. In that case, in that rare case, you can still use action words. And even when you speak, action words are not just reserved for your CV or resume. You should also use them when you appear for your interview. So all those things are important. Now, be ready to say something about what you would like to do if hired, because they always ask this question. So if we decide to hire you, what will you do? Then don't just read out the job description from your memory. That's not what they want. They want you to tell them how you can contribute genuinely and how you can make a meaningful difference, right? If you do that, the odds of your job application going to the top will increase significantly. Now, tell them about how you plan to implement whatever you have planned, because plans alone mean nothing. It's the implementation that matters. So tell them about your plans and tell them briefly about how you'll implement it. No employer wants extremely detailed project plans from you, because after you join, anyway, they are going to impart some training. So they are not expecting professional expertise from you, because that's why you are being hired. Otherwise, you would have hired them or someone else. But so they know that. But at least you can make an attempt to share something meaningful and intelligent. Share something about your legitimate plans and share something about how you will go about implementing the same. All right, then you should do some mock interviews, very important. And if you really don't know an answer, it's perfectly okay to say, I don't know the answer. And sometimes what you can also do is, even if you don't know the answer, you can try to suggest something meaningful. And then say that, see here, let me be honest with you, I don't know the answer, but this is what I think. And then you can say something, right? As long as it is meaningful, all employers will be okay with it. So there are two extremes. At one extreme, there's a person that is lying and bluffing. And at the other extreme, there is another person who is saying, no, I don't know. And then the person just shuts off. Don't go to either of these extremes. You can always say the answer if you know it. If you don't, just admit it and then say, however, this is what I think. And then say at least something meaningful. That's how you answer these questions. Then, when you are asked to ask questions, never feel shy or feel threatened. It is your right, and not just your right. See, I have interviewed so many people who never ask me questions. I generally don't hire them, because it shows a lack of enthusiasm, it shows laziness, it shows a lack of prioritization, it shows lack of willingness, and so many negative things. So, you should always ask questions whenever you are given an opportunity to do so. Always carry copies of your resume and CV with you. Do you have your business card? Carry it with you. Even if you're a student, you can still have your own business card. On the business card, it can say PhD scholar and then name of your institute. That's perfectly fine. In fact, people will be impressed that although you're not currently employed, you're still having a business card. Why not? You can. You can definitely have a business card, even without having a business. Last point, you have the power of your smartphones. Many people I see, they go for interviews, they sit in the company premises and they keep checking WhatsApp. Very bad habit. WhatsApp is, first of all, WhatsApp should not be checked so many times during the day. And it's a real kind of waste of time. I myself, I use it very, like, not very often. I'm not even there on Facebook, but I'm not a boring person. If you talk to the people who are related to me or my friends, they'll tell you that Nikhil is an interesting person. Even if he's not there much on Facebook and WhatsApp, he still is interesting and he has good social skills. So it's not that I don't possess those skills, just that I like to invest my time in something much more meaningful than WhatsApp and Facebook. So coming back to the slide, all interview candidates should distance themselves from their cell phones. I mean, distance themselves as in they should just shut it off. What happened one day, somebody came to my room, their cell phone started ringing. So that's why I thought of sharing this with you. All right. Then now sometimes what happens is, now if you, let's consider point number 2 first. If you honestly don't know the answer, just remember what I told you like a slide ago. But if you know the answer, you just need some time to rearrange it. You know what's the smart thing to do? Just repeat the question. So that way you buy some time, and by the time you proceed with the question, you get the right answer in your mind and you can frame it correctly and then you can deliver it. So you can begin like this. That is a good question. So let me think about what I can do if this thing happens. Okay, here's what I can do. And then you shoot it. And yeah, then you will nail it. So that's how you have to strategize. And then the person who interviews will also come to know that, this is a smart person. Now, one more thing. Use small talk whenever possible. So let's say if you meet somebody in the company premises or university premises, at your employer's premises, and you say hi, hello, or before the interview, you can wish them good morning. And if they start saying something about the weather, you just don't say yes and smile. You can also contribute actively, saying, yeah, it's kind of a little bit humid today, but it's slightly better than it was last week. That is called a small talk, and you can use it. Never discuss anything controversial during small talk, like politics, for example. Stay away from politics. You should write a thank you note within 24 hours of your interview. Very critical. It shows enthusiasm, initiative, and willingness. And one thing that you should ensure that you should never bug HR with constant emails saying that, oh my God, did I get selected? Did I get selected? Don't do that. Because HR has to reply to like nearly hundreds of people. So please do them a favor. And I hear some HR personnel saying thanks to me. You're welcome. Okay, I think that's the last slide. And then I'll reserve some time for questions and answers. Special tips, the power of meaningful networking. So let me show you the last slide. Let's prepare our students for great employment opportunities. And now let's come back to the second last slide, so that you'll have a sigh of relief that it's over finally. No, I'm just joking. All right. So the power of meaningful networking. So you have to start early. So tell your students, please tell your students to start early on LinkedIn. It is very important to have your own LinkedIn profile from the very first year of your college. Start interacting with company posts. Start giving, posting interesting replies. And here's the LinkedIn story I was talking about. You know what happened at a college? There was an interview, and at that interview, some people who were very active on LinkedIn, came for that interview. They used to work for a certain company, and they knew that that a student from certain college always used to post very intelligent and enthusiastic replies to their posts, and he had been doing it for years. So on the day of the interview, when that person actually walked into the room, they, as soon as he sat down and told his name, the people who came there for the interview said, "Oh, so you are Jacob. Well, hi, Jacob. We have been reviewing your answers for the past 2 years. You sound very enthusiastic." And well, guess what? He got hired. His interview was only 10 minutes long. He got hired on the spot. Why? Because he had been interacting with the company's LinkedIn posts for almost 2 years. So I'm not saying that, see, 2 years is not a magic figure. You can also interact for 6 months, or you can interact for 3 years. What I'm essentially trying to say here is, if you do something that others don't, you increase your likelihood of getting selected. And if it's positive, the likelihood is even more in your favor. It's going to be in your favor. All right. Glassdoor, it's a fantastic website that tells you about how employers treat their employees. Read it carefully before going for any interview. If you clearly see there are red flags, go to the interview very carefully. And there's the if you want to decide, there are 10 interviews all on the same day, then go to Glassdoor and check the reviews. I mean, not all reviews are legitimate, but from the wording you can guess. If it's full of adjectives, it's a fake review. So you can just get a feel of it, and then you can in fact use it to screen your employers. Why not? All right. And also it tells something about salaries. Last but not the least, use your common sense. Smile and laugh more often on a daily basis. I'm not talking about the interview day. If you smile and laugh on a daily basis, you develop positivity, and it helps on the day of the interview. You have to sleep well, because otherwise it will affect your health. And then you have to exercise, stay healthy, read good books, and attend meaningful webinars. And do all the positive things that you can in your capacity to improve your odds of getting selected. All right, so that's all I had to say. So let's prepare our students for fantastic employment opportunities. With that, I thank you all for your time. And now I'm open to questions. So please share your questions. Thank you,
Sanjay Roy,
everybody.
sir, you have raised your hand, sir. You can ask questions. Sanjay Roy, sir?
Yeah, Nikhil ji.
Yeah.
Can you share your email, please?
Yeah.
In the chat box.
Yes. Let me type it. Just a minute. All right, I'll type it here. Okay. Doctor, all right, I'm typing it here. Just let me know if you received it, because I'm typing from my phone. dr.nikhil.gokhale@gmail.com. Is everybody able to receive it? Did everybody receive it?
Yeah, it is in the chat box.
Okay. All right.
Sir, thanks for the wonderful session, sir. And sir, one Mr. Mohammed Azharuddin, Mr. Mohammed, sir? Mohammed Azharuddin, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Like you want to ask some questions? Sir is online.
Yeah, actually, I don't have any specific questions. Just I want to thank sir for the 3 amazing talks. Sir, thank you so much. Thanks. I learned a lot of things from you.
You're most welcome, and thank you for being with us, and thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.